Are you a busy entrepreneur or business owner who is struggling to delegate tasks, having a hard time trusting people, or finding yourself basically stuck in the day-to-day of your business? If so, this video is for you. My name is Kyle Mao. I'm the founder at HireUA, a premium recruiting agency that sources great talent from Ukraine. And in this video, we are going to be talking about what business owners struggle with. And this is a variety of different things, kind of different topics we can go into, but basically we're going to be talking about how to delegate effectively and ultimately build a team that supports you, builds you up, helps your business grow, instead of being stuck in the day-to-day and doing all of the tasks yourself, because that is not a way to find success long-term as a business owner. So we're going to be talking about understanding the value of actually delegating tasks. We're going to be talking about identifying the right tasks to actually delegate. We're going to talk thirdly about building a trustworthy team. Fourth, delegation techniques for success. And then number 5, overcoming some common challenges when it comes to outsourcing and delegating tasks off of your plate. Let's talk about understanding the value of actually delegating tasks. First up, you need to understand the value of your time and understand the value of actually delegating tasks. For example, if your business is making $1 million a year revenue, then you can realistically divide that by 1,920 hours and say that you as the business owner can generate, doesn't mean you put it in your pocket obviously, but you generate over $500 an hour. If you do 1 million divided by 1920, it comes out to about 520. So your time is worth $520 an hour. That's maybe a little simplistic, but I think you understand the point that I'm making here. If you are in a position in your business where you're making that much money and you're sitting there wondering like, should I delegate this task to somebody for $10 an hour? Of course it is. Even if your business only makes a shade of that $1 million in profit, more than likely your time is still worth well over $100 an hour. It's kind of a no-brainer. You're going to delegate that task, of course. The benefits of delegation is that you are then able to focus on the most important things in the business, and that's growing the company. That's sales and marketing. People get confused. They might think like, oh, if I create content, I get more clients, I get more customers, whatever it might be. And that's not how it necessarily works. If you create content, but you're the one that's doing all the scheduling across all the social media channels, guess what? That's a lot of hours. So for example, it's going to take me, 15, 20 minutes to shoot this video, but it's going to take the video editor probably at least several hours to edit it, make it all look good, make me look pretty. And then it's going to take even more time to chop those into shorts. It's going to take even more time after that to write the description. So when you start looking at all of the stuff that you want to do in your business to bring in new clients and customers, there's a huge chunk of it that can be delegated. So basically, huge benefit to delegation is actually focusing on the only things that matter in your business and using your time wisely. In addition to that, a lot of entrepreneurs are suspect to burnout. If you're constantly working 16-hour days and let's say you're, missing soccer practice or soccer games, you don't have enough time with your kids, you don't have enough time with your spouse, you're just constantly overwhelmed and stressed because you're in the day-to-day. And when you're in the day-to-day, the other thing that comes up is that you're not able to make good decisions because you're too close to it. You have to be able to step back and kind of take a bird's eye view and say, okay, we are seeing this problem consistently happen in the business. In order to fix it, I need to solve this on a larger macro scale. Whereas if you're the one constantly fixing those problems in the business, you're really only focused on that very moment, that very problem, that very client, able to step back, able to build a longer term, more sustainable solution. You're also going to find that you're going to have more productivity and more energy when you are delegating tasks because you get to actually focus on the stuff that you like. So if you can't automate a task that you don't like, you should delegate it. I always say business owners didn't get into business to do paperwork and accounting. So if you are able to offload all of the little things that drive you crazy and that basically suck your energy away from everything else in your business, then you have all that energy back and you can focus it on other things that are going to make a larger impact on yourself, your family, your business. And then of course, just having more free time. So you need to have passions and things outside of your business that give you energy, that make you want to get up and make you want to live life. And of course, as a business owner, it's easy to say business is my hobby, but you should try to have a few things outside of that. And of course, your overall health, your well-being. If you can't take an hour a day and go to the gym and get some exercise, you can't eat right, then of course, that's going to have a mental impact in the long term. And it's ultimately going to impact your ability to run a business in the long term, which is not what you want to do. You don't want to be burning out. Business is a long game. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. Step number 2 is basically finding out what you actually need to delegate. The first thing I always say to look at is what is a strength of yours and what is a weakness of yours. And everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people are creative types, some people are operators, some people, have a variety of different strengths and weaknesses, and you always want to be playing towards them. For example, if you're a really detail-oriented person, you like building processes and systems, then you might want to be outsourcing stuff like the marketing side. And the stuff that's more creative that you're not quite as strong at, you can get someone to write the copy or to, edit the videos. Obviously, that's something you should be be doing. You have all these different little things. Maybe you're more of an artist, a creative type. You hate building SOPs, you hate building processes, you hate looking at Excel sheets. Then great, you start delegating all of those tasks. So that's the first thing, is look at what are you good at, and then also what do you suck at. Now, there are some points as a business owner that you're really good at some stuff, but maybe you don't like doing it. Maybe, for example, you're really good at sales, but you're kind of burning out on sales calls. And that's something that gets to be, the more sales calls you have, the more no-shows you have, the more crappy people you have to deal with, tends to kind of burn you out over time. Maybe you're great at sales, but it's not something that you really love doing in it. You're starting to feel like, another sales call. Like, I gotta go research this person, their company. I got to prepare for the call. If you're finding yourself dragging, then you're not going to be enthused. You're not going to want to wake up and take sales calls. That's where it becomes really important to see like what is giving you energy and motivation and what is just sucking the well dry, because you don't want to be in a position where you're always sucking the well dry. But that's where you have to be strategic. So for example, hiring a good salesperson, that's difficult. If you're really good at sales, it might be something that you can't take off your plate immediately. So again, be looking at strengths, weaknesses, what gives you energy, what doesn't give you energy, and then start kind of putting together, hey, I'm not good at this and I hate doing it. And that's like the first thing that you should be outsourcing. So for example, I hate paperwork. I'm not an accountant. I barely passed my accounting class. I don't want to be doing that because it drives me mad. I hate doing it and I'm not very good at it. So that's something in my business that, guess what, I shouldn't be doing. So again, be looking at what you're good at, what you hate doing, what you're bad at, and what you like doing, and kind of just piece it together, what you should outsource first there. You should also be looking at how often tasks have to be done in order to delegate them. So if, for example, something only needs to be done on a monthly basis and it only takes you an hour or so, but maybe you don't like doing it, then you have to start weighing the pros and cons. Like, if I'm only going to bring this person on for this one task, like what else are they going to do? Am I just going to engage a freelancer on a just per item basis? There's a lot of different ways to look at this. So you need to be saying, hey, what's the priority? What's the importance? How often do I need to actually do this? And then decide, okay, this is something that is actually worth outsourcing and delegating to someone. Does it require someone to be a full-time hire, or can it just be done with somebody who's a freelancer, so to speak? You also need to be looking at things that are repetitive. So if you can automate it, like you should. If there's a piece of software out there that can do the job, then you should by all means try to pursue that versus hiring somebody. A lot of times that will just make your life easier. Of course, it kind of depends on the kind of business you run. And, software is not perfect, but it is a lot easier to get a basic Zapier automation working than it is to hire someone to do something. So always be looking at time-consuming, repetitive tasks if there's a way to automate it with software versus hiring somebody. And that's, honestly, even as someone who runs a hiring agency, that's the better way to go if you can. It's also important, kind of depending on what your business is, to have software working with people. So always expecting people to remember every little detail gets very difficult. So if you have software that, when somebody submits a form, it opens a ticket and assigns it to somebody, little automations like that will help the people in your business. Keep that in mind. And then finally, you need to be looking at what is a low impact task. So you need to be looking at what am I doing that takes a lot of time that is just not doing anything for the business. There's growth tasks and then there's maintenance tasks. Be looking at those separately and deciding what is actually worth hiring. The third step towards delegating tasks effectively is hiring the right team. And obviously this is something that we help people do at HireUA all the time. The first step towards getting the right person is doing steps 1 and 2 that I've already talked about in this video. So if you have no idea what you want to hire for, you're obviously not going to be successful when it comes to hiring that person if you don't know what the hell you want them to do. It is so important to have looked at your time, looked at what you need help with, evaluated what you're good at and what you're not, and then to start having clear processes and systems in place for that person. This is so easy to do, and I see so many business owners who simply don't do it. It's as simple as recording a Loom one time. This is very easy SOP hack. You create a Loom of you doing whatever task it is. Let's say the task is uploading a video to YouTube and making sure that it's SEO ready. So record a video of you doing this on Loom, get the whole transcript, and then go to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, based off of this transcript, can you build a standard operating procedure about how to upload a YouTube video? You paste the transcript from Loom into ChatGPT. It spits you out a document. You attach that document with the video, and voila, you have a very good SOP or training. game. Don't expect someone to come into your business and just figure things out. That's not how it's going to work. And we're going to get into this a little bit more in the video, but part of hiring the right team and part of training them and making sure that you are delegating tasks effectively is constant feedback and training. It is not something where you just set it and forget it. You're always going to have to work with your people to get things done the way that you want them done. After you have defined the job roles and the expectations of it, it's time to actually start looking for candidates. There's a lot of videos on this channel about how to properly screen, interview, and then onboard somebody. Feel free to browse through the archives. There's lots there. I won't go into too much detail here, but basically you can either fill it yourself, you can hire an agency, or you can of course use your network. There's pros and cons to each one of those. And obviously I'm biased. I think you should fill it with an agency. So if you're interested in doing that, go to hire-ua.com, book a call, and be happy to help you out. When it comes to building out the team, there are a few things that I think are extremely helpful. And the first one is establishing clear guidelines, i.e. when someone's going to work, when work is going to be done, and how often you expect them to respond. Secondly, you should always encourage open dialogue and feedback. So you should drop the ego. Oftentimes, you're hiring someone who ideally knows more than you about the role that you hired them to do. That is effective and good delegation, is putting people in positions to succeed. So you need to be willing to drop the ego and listen to what they ask and what they say. And if you're unable to do that, then ultimately the relationship's probably not going to work out. You have to be willing to set aside the ego, take some feedback, be willing to take some criticism as the business owner. It's one of the hardest things to do, but if you have the right people around you, they're going to make things better. Of course, that means you have to hire the right people in the first place, which is very hard to do, but there's always ways to improve, always ways to learn. So drop the ego. And then the last thing, if people are afraid of making mistakes, then they're going to cover them up. So you have to make it clear that when mistakes are made, it is a situation where they're going to be given feedback and they're going to be improved upon instead of just trying to hide the mistakes. I lived in Ukraine for quite a few years and I read quite a few books about the former Soviet Union and communism. And a lot of times there would be these factories throughout the Soviet Union where people would effectively have to meet a quota. For example, let's say they had to make 1,000 cars a month. All that the central bureaucrats wanted in Moscow was 1,000 cars. They wanted a piece of paper saying 1,000 cars are made this month. That's it. The problem is there were no standards, and the only thing that mattered was hitting that quota. So no matter what, even if the cars were defective, the seatbelts didn't work, the motors would blow up after 100 miles, people at the factory would say, they're good to go. There's 1,000 cars there. We don't know what state it's in, but that was a culture at the time that covered up mistakes. It was always better in those cases to say something, whatever they wanted to hear, and then try to just shrink away. And that is not how you can run a small business. If there's a problem, you don't want someone shying away from it. You want someone saying, hey, boss, I made a mistake here. Like, can you help me fix it? And then you can, of course, train them on how to make sure it doesn't happen again. You can build a better process. You can build a better system. And the last thing that you earn is then their loyalty and their respect, because everyone is going to make mistakes. It's just part of the game. As a business owner, you should be, and this is a strong way to put it, but you should cherish the mistakes because it's an opportunity for growth. You have to accept that not everything is going to be perfect all the time. It's just the law of statistics. Things are not going to be perfect all the time. People are going to screw up. When it happens, you just have to accept it. You train them, you improve upon it, and you move on. Number 4, here's how you actually empower your team. So first off, unless you want to still be involved in every little micro detail, which you don't want to be as a business owner, that's the entire reason why you're delegating this, you have to figure out what decisions they can make. And ideally, there's usually a money component to this as well. So for example, you might say to your assistant, like, anytime I ask you to do something, you're automatically authorized to spend up to $300 to solve this problem without even talking to me about it. Or for example, you could say to your support team, let's say you run like a software business, you can say, if it's going to make the customer happy, we can lose up to $50. Like, let's say, for example, that you charge $100 a month for the software. You can say at any point, to make a customer happy and make sure there's not a long-term problem, you can spend up to $50 to solve the problem. Same thing like if you have a client, right? Your CSMs, your client success managers would know, if it's going to save the relationship, it's going to make the client happy, you can spend up to $300, whatever it might be. Figure out what decisions can be made autonomously without your input. Figure out what financial value that can be in your business, and then give people that power to make those decisions, and also accept that sometimes there will be mistakes that come with it. The second part of this is to empower people to actually solve the problems. The best way to do this is that when someone comes to you with a problem, you don't give the solution right off the bat. You would say, hey, okay, here's the problem. You want to really make sure that they're clear on the problem. And then you'd say, hey, what are the 2 or 3 solutions that you have for this? And then make them run through, okay, this is scenario A, B, and C. And you'd say then finally, which one do you think is best? And by empowering people to actually solve the problems without your input, instead of just relying on them to get an answer, encourages independent thinking, it encourages creative new solutions, and ultimately it encourages people to solve the problem on their own without your input. Because if you have to then be involved in every little decision, the entire point of delegating and hiring somebody has been effectively negated. And this is where kind of working it in with the dollar amount is really effective. So if someone knows, like, if the problem is going to cost over X amount, then you need to go to the business owner. Guess what? You're going to only get problems that are over that amount. And if you're comfortable, solving them at that point and you're not going to be overwhelmed with it, then perfect. The last thing about kind of just empowering your team in general to be successful is to always be encouraging feedback. So on almost every team meeting at HireUA, I say like, hey, look, what could be better? What could make your life, your job better and easier, and always be open to that feedback. And when someone actually gives it to you, if it's good and it's going to improve it, make sure you actually implement it. They will respect your ability to make changes. And as long as you're a small, medium business, you can make this change and you can implement it and you can make people's lives better. When you start getting to a big corporation, then you've got all this red tape, you've got all these bureaucrats who always have an opinion about how things can be changed and how they should be done, even though they don't actually do the job themselves. So as long as you're small and you're agile, you can actually make those changes and people will respect you for it. Okay, the fifth thing I want to talk about in regards to delegation is basically overcoming common challenges. And the big one is trust. So as the business owner, you've built the business, it's your baby. It is very, very hard to let go of the reins. But you have to understand that it's very easy to get to, say, 6 figures, but it's really hard to start getting to 7 and 8 figures without putting people around you and having systems and a team in place to execute upon the systems. But you have to let go of the perfection. Like, a good business owner realizes that there will be problems. There's always going to be problems, and there's always going to be fires. There's always going to be headaches. That's part of life. Like, life is always going to have ups and downs. It really is. So accepting that and accepting that they're an opportunity to learn from and to grow from and improve upon is really key. So not punishing team members for making mistakes. And again, going back to that kind of communism example, not setting up a culture where they are going to run and hide when a mistake is made. Instead, they're comfortable admitting the mistake. And then of course that they're open for feedback and improving and fixing upon it. You build trust by being consistent. You build trust by consistently saying, here is this task, here's this item, I trust you to handle it, and then providing good feedback. So someone may not get it perfect the first time. In fact, they're probably not going to. But if you're giving them good feedback and you have an open mind and you're able to tweak things, it will make things a lot better in the long term. You must address mistakes. There's a kind way to do it. And it doesn't usually start with, you did this wrong. Usually when people make a mistake, it's because something wasn't clear. So always look at yourself first in your process and say, was I not clear about this? And a lot of times you're going to discover, oh, I wasn't clear about it. And when you start doing that, then you start understanding what people thought and where the disconnect was. So a simple question I like to ask sometimes is, what did you think this instruction was? And make sure, and a lot of times they'll say, I thought it was this. And then you look at what you told them to do and it's like, oh, yeah, no, I really wasn't very clear about this. And this is especially true when you're working with people from overseas. There's always going to be a slight language barrier, slight gap, cultural differences. One thing may not mean what you think it does to them. So always just keep that in mind. Always be willing to look in your own mirror, because your team is a direct reflection of you. The last thing is to be building confidence. So when someone does something well, let them know. And you can reward, assuming you've put the right people in your business who are hard workers, when they do a good job and you reward them with more responsibility, that is a gratifying feeling. And of course, rewarding them with more pay should also come with that. Finding the talent, the diamond in the rough, who is able to grow into a role is a really, really good way to build a business. Really, really good way to build that team. But you have to make sure that the people right under you. So let's say you're a business owner, you've got 10, 15 people. Your operations manager, your general manager, your head people, they need to be top of the line, because the further away you get from them, like the people under them and then under them, there's always going to be a decay on the standards. So the bigger your organization gets, the more removed you are, the less eyes you have on people directly. So always make sure the people, your leadership is really top line A+ people. It will make sure that they hold the standards as tightly as possible. All right, this video about the 5 things that you can do to master the art of delegation. In summary, basically you want to be understanding the value of delegating the tasks, coming up with what the tasks are themselves, and then building the right team, how to actually delegate properly for success. And then of course, long-term, making sure that you overcome the common challenges and give people an opportunity opportunity to thrive in the role that you actually hired them to do. As a business owner, this is one of the hardest things, and I myself struggled with it for a really long time. As a business owner, learning to trust people and delegate these tasks is the gateway to building a longer term, more successful business that runs without you instead of needing you to be in every little thing. I know it is so difficult to do this. It is really hard to start trusting people, and it's really hard sometimes to actually not encourage mistakes, but it's hard to learn to allow them. It is so difficult to do, but if you invest the time and you get your mindset right with this and you start putting the right people in place and you start giving them a chance, I think you will be amazed at how effective it can be and how people will just go to war for you. Start delegating today. Embrace the pain. It's going to be painful for a little while, but the sooner you start doing it, the easier it'll be. And finally, of course, if you're looking to start delegating some tasks, we would be happy to talk to you about this, happy to point you in the right direction and kind of talk to you about how HireUA works. So go to hire-ua.com. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel for more information about delegating, hiring, systems, outsourcing, and of course, other fun content about Ukraine and other places in the world. Again, my name is Kyle. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.